But the one that we're asking for is, can we raise the child support grant to at least 855 Rand, which is the amount given by Stats SA, and under that amount, Stats SA says you're living in extreme poverty. So 580 is already below the 855 Rand, and the situation is only expected to get worse. So we understand that there are very difficult choices that need to be made in the budget, like the chairperson said, there's the scale of the socioeconomic problem and the competing objectives. So we understand that before this committee, there are very tough choices that need to be made. And this is why we repeat our call for a wealth tax on the richest 1% of South Africans, which the WITS study in 2021 found that it could produce as much as 134 billion Rand, and that's with a tax evasion rate of 30%. I hand over to Nicoline, who will talk you through her personal experiences working on a farm, and will also give you a sense of how she intends to brace herself for the economic shock.
Good day, I'm Nicoline McGee. Yes, I'm a seasonal farm worker for 15 years. Well, I work on farms. But this petrol prices is rising. We are hungry more than ever. We struggle from season to season. Our season starts early, ends early, and starts later than usual. In the past, we start at September and end March, beginning of April. But now we start only at the end of October and start in end early February. So there's a huge gap. And with the social grants, or that 580, now it's now 580, you can't do everything. From my point of view, I must pay transport for my children. I must buy toiletries for them because I have girls. And it's so difficult to buy all that stuff. I can't even tell my girls, this my mom is going to buy you a jacket or a t-shirt or something like that because there's no money. When the season ends, it's a time for us as seasonal workers, is the worst time because then we go from hunger to hunger. It's a cycle for us. It's like a wheelbarrow. There's no ending because we stay hunger, we are hunger. Every day we face hunger. I used to pay 19 Rand a bread. Now I pay 22 Rand a bread. The taxi prices is going up. I pay for my children 940 for my twins to go to school. Now I pay 1,350 Rand for my twins to go to school. And I must pay it because they must go to school. They must get the education. For my baby girl, I pay 350. Now it's 500 Rand per month. And I must pay that from the SASSA grant. I must pay that money. It's too little to pay all of that stuff, to buy toiletries and to buy food for my kids to eat. It is, some people I know go to gambling. They use that to make extra money. Sometimes they lose, sometimes they win. And I know people go to the loan sites who take that money from the loan sites. At the end of the day, must pay double up. And then again, they sit with nothing. So it is a disgusting thought to think we are South Africans, we work on the farms. We make South Africa what it is today. But we are the people, the vulnerable people, because we are hungry. And I think it's not acceptable for us to be hungry. With this 580, there's nothing you can do. At least give us that raise, at least for the children for 855. Then we can pay transport, we can buy enough food, you can buy toiletries for children. So we can live a better life. Already with the minimum wage, it's already a disgrace to give us a minimum wage instead of a living wage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's us completed. Over.
Thank you very much for such a short and straightforward presentation. Mr. Nodada, can I kindly check with you if Blind Africa has now joined the meeting?
Not yet, Chairperson. We are still trying to get hold of Warren, Chair. Thank you.
It is okay. Whenever he joins, you'll alert us, but I think we must first give preference to those that are in the meeting. He'll be the last to present. Let me welcome Mr. Matthew Parks to give us a presentation on behalf of COSATU. You're welcome, Mr. Parks.
Okay, morning, Chair, morning, members. Let me just quickly upload our document quickly. Just 1 second, Chair. Okay, hopefully, Chair, you can see it okay. Morning to members and colleagues. I think our presentation will be fairly quick, Chair, because it's a fairly short bill, as members would know, but there are some quite useful and quite important allocations in it. But I think, Chair, just as an opening, we do really restate our position as COSATU that we are disappointed about what we see as lackluster budgets over many years, including the current budget. And in particular, Chair, we feel that the budgets often walk back some of the quite progressive commitments made by the president, made by government during the State of the Nation addresses. But Chair, we do appreciate this is a special appropriation bill, and there are some quite useful allocations within it that us as COSATU and others have campaigned for. But overall, Chair, we do feel the budget doesn't decisively respond, as you had mentioned in your opening remarks, to our fundamental crisis of unemployment, crime, corruption, poverty, of weak economic growth, of struggling public and municipal services and state-owned enterprises. We do feel at times, Chair, that the budget prioritizes the deficit at the expense of stimulating economic growth and jobs. But having said that, Chair, on the special appropriation bill, we think there are some quite important, quite progressive allocations contained within it. And obviously, this is just additional allocations for the previous financial year. But we think some of these allocations are actually going to make a significant difference in terms of rebuilding state capacity to help support urgent economic growth in key sectors and subsequently job creation in those value chains. And in particular, I really want to kind of emphasize the allocations given to boost the turnaround of Transnet and Metro Rail. I think we also want to just kind of lift up what we really feel are quite substantial allocations. They're quite positive ones in the bill. So we have over 2 billion rand for the rebuilding of Parliament. Obviously, we need to see Parliament at its optimal effectiveness, because that's key to oversight and accountability, to renewing society and the state and so on. Of course, we have our local elections within about 6 months, give or take. So additional allocations for that. And I think, Chair, even on that front, we can't afford to cut corners because, we live in a highly contested political era, often where fake news is spread. And we need to have an IEC that is well capacitated to deliver and to maintain its reputation of free and fair elections. So I think members would know very well, at times the difficulties of zip machines, the batteries dying, long queues, etc. So we really do need to constantly reinforce the IEC. But Chair, there's really very welcome allocations for Transnet, over 8 billion rand for its north and iron corridors, over 1 billion rand for the Durban container terminal, our largest terminal in the country, which has had, at times real difficulties in processing imports and exports, and nearly 6 billion rand for Metro Rail's rolling stock renewal program. Yeah, I think, the investments for us at COSATU and Transnet are quite critical. We think that, after Eskom, Transnet is the next key intervention point to really unlocking the economy. Members like Honorable Ryder, who were here in the previous parliament, would remember that in the MTBS about 2-3 years ago, we had a 55 billion rand revenue shortfall, and largely because of Transnet's difficulties. So investments for us, on the corridors and the container terminals will really help boost our mining, manufacturing, agricultural sectors. And that means we're going to help to save and create jobs. But also it's going to mean additional tax revenue for the state as well. So it's a positive cyclical intervention. Chair, we do appreciate that, government correctly is reluctant to provide further debt relief for SOEs, that the fiscus is always under severe pressure. And, the days of just writing a blank check are definitely over. But we do think there's a special argument to be made for Transnet, linked to its turnaround program, to help it to settle its debt, which will help free up capital for the modernization of its ports on the freight railway network. Because again, Chair, this unlocks mining, manufacturing, agricultural sectors and jobs. But as these industries take off, especially the mining sector, which is a major contributor of company taxes to the state, it also helps to reinforce the state as well. Obviously, it must be linked to turnaround interventions of Transnet and so forth. It can't just be a blank check. Again, I think we've been quite pleased in this budget and even last year's budget too, for both budgets, but this bill as well, about the infrastructure support for Metro Rail, Chair. We think that's money well spent, because Metro Rail is the backbone of urban public transport. It enables 10 million commuters, most of whom are workers, to travel to work cheaply, fast, safely, reduce road congestion, etc. But also saves money for workers' pockets because Metro Rail is far cheaper than other forms of transport. And again, Chair, it helps to boost the urban economy when workers can get to work quickly and on time and so forth. And when they have more money in their pocket, that means they spend more money buying goods. Chair, also, the timing is also fortuitous as well, because of the war in the Middle East and the subsequent literally doubling of international oil prices, and the subsequent massive fuel price hikes, which we're likely to see another one next week Wednesday. So investments in Transnet and Metro Rail are critical. Transnet, which is fully productive, helps to protect food from inflation. Metro Rail, which is fully returned to capacity, helps shield workers and commuters from fuel inflation. And Chair, longer term, if we really want to begin to reduce our exposure as a nation to international oil price instability, which is always going to be there, then investment in Transnet and freight and passenger rail, as well as public transport at large, are really critical to help insulating the economy and consumers from international oil price fluctuations. The proposals, Chair, on this bill, because it's it's a supplementary bill, is really that we should continue to give support for ESCOM and other SOEs. We should be ramping up support for Transnet and of course expanding support for Metro Rail. We do appreciate that this bill and the last two budgets speak to that, but we think, just given where we are, we need to actually be intensifying this kind of support. So in conclusion, Chair, there are some quite important allocations in the bill, but overall, in the overall budget envelope as such, we do feel that at times we focus on balancing the books at the expense of really tabling a bold stimulus package, which will help fix public and municipal services, stimulate growth, create jobs, provide relief for the poor and unemployed, and also ramping up tax compliance. But we do appreciate this bill, Chair, provides useful allocations. I think just lastly, Chair, we've been sitting at 1% economic growth for the past decade. The MTEF projects at best will get to 2.2% in 2 years' time. The 1.4% growth for this year has already been slashed by the IMF to 1% because of the war in the Middle East. We really need to be having a discussion saying, how do we get to 3% growth if you want to see unemployment beginning to fall at a meaningful rate? And again, Chair, we can't as a nation continue to normalize 1% economic growth nor 40% plus unemployment. That really is a ticking time bomb. And we saw in July 2021 that, it can take one small thing to spark a fire. And the cost to this, to South Africa, that time besides, several hundred persons who lost their lives, was about a 50 billion rand price tag for damages. That doesn't even take into account lost potential investment down the road. And of course, the pension society of workers isn't unlimited. So we should be really seeing how do we have interventions like in the special appropriation bill to actually help unlock economic growth and help create jobs and thus help the state get out of the difficulty and help society have a sense of hope. So that's our presentation, Chair, and thanks to members for giving us space, Chair. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Comrade Matthew. Colleagues, let me invite Youth Capital by Ms. Magwaza to give us their presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Can I please request some sharing rights for Sibaba Lwenobandla?
Sorted, colleagues.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Buhlebet Magwaza, and I am here today to represent Youth Capital. Thank you for the opportunity, Chair, to the members of Parliament and everyone else in the room. As Youth Capital, we are here with a very specific and urgent ask, which is we are asking for the reinstatement of the Basic Education Employment Initiative through the special appropriations bill. The BI is not a new program. This is not a new proposal that is untested, but this is a call to restore a program that has demonstrated impact at scale and which has now been effectively defunded. At its core, our ask is very simple. We are asking for the restoration of approximately 200,000 opportunities for young people that have been removed in a single budget cycle. Next slide, please. But before I go further, I just want to give some context to the youth unemployment crisis in this country and why we believe that as Youth Capital is now a national emergency. Youth unemployment in South Africa is not just high, it is structural, it is persistent, and it is worsening. More than 4 in 10 young people in South Africa are currently unemployed, and almost 10 million young South Africans are neither in education, employment, or training. And importantly, in the Q4 statistics essay South Africa on the quarterly labor force, we were informed that there is now a rise in discouraged work seekers who have effectively stopped looking for work only because the opportunities are far and few in between. Therefore, we are at a critical stage, and youth unemployment is not just a temporary turn down. This is a system that is not absorbing young people at the rates that they're entering it, and yet, despite it being a crisis, we are now in a situation where the tabled budget for 2026 did not present any solutions towards how we can then address youth unemployment, or there was no clear youth unemployment plan in the tabled budget. What we saw is that the crisis is widely acknowledged, but not translated into fiscal responses. And that is the gap that this presentation is here to address. Next slide, please. We are at a crossroads where the tabled budget shows us the fiscal contradiction. I'd like to take you along where I'd like to present to you what the budget is actually doing, what the actual budget that has been tabled is actually doing. There's a clear focus on deficit reduction. There's a clear focus on debt stabilization, and there's also clear focus on fiscal consolidation. And those are very important, but they come with massive trade-offs. Because what we are seeing at the same time is that there is no direct employment response at scale. There are no youth employment targets, and there is a reduction in funding for programs that have already proven effective, such as the Basic Education Employment Initiative and other public employment programs like those in the arts, which have completely been cut off. So here I'm highlighting a contradiction where government is acknowledging that unemployment is a crisis, but then there is also then reduced funding for one of the most effective responses. And to that we are saying debts might be stabilizing, but the livelihoods are actually not. Next slide, please. What is really important about this ask is that we are not starting from zero. Through the BEI, we can see what already works. Public employment programs, particularly those under the Presidential Employment Stimulus, have created more than 2.5 million opportunities since 2020, with 82% of the recipients or participants of the public employment programs being young people themselves. And specifically for the BEI itself, it has created more than 1.3 million opportunities for young people across 20,000 schools nationally. But beyond the numbers, what really matters is the impact itself. Through the program, young people have a direct income. They get to have meaningful first-hand experience, which is something that has been cited as a deterrent for young people being able to access opportunities. It has also provided support for overstretched schools or undercapacitated schools, and has improved learning environments and ultimately the learning outcomes of the learners in these schools. But most importantly, it hasn't just created employment or earning opportunities, it has created economic multipliers. We have seen through the young people that have benefited from this program that there is increased household spending, there is local economic activity, and broader labor market effects. So then this intervention, the BI itself, is not just a social intervention, it is an economic instrument itself. Next slide, please. But despite the impact, we have seen that in the tabled budgets of 2026, the program has effectively been defunded. In 2025, the program had a budget of 5.6 billion, and right now that has gone down to 340 million rand. And this 340 million rand has been earmarked just for administration and project management and not actual implementation or earning opportunities for young people themselves. And therefore, there is no confirmed phase 5 of the program, there is no rollout plan, and there is no actual funding for opportunities for young people. The impact of this is immediate and it is catastrophic because it means that around 200,000 opportunities have been lost in one budget cycle with just like without any preemptive actions that have been given to young people and other people who are actually benefiting from this program. It's just been effectively cut off immediately. That also means that there's reduced support for 20,000 schools around the country that actually relied on this support, and a breakdown in pathways from education into work for young people in South Africa. This wasn't a gradual reduction. It was a sudden withdrawal of opportunities for young people, and at scale, 200,000 opportunities is a lot to be lost in just one go, without any deterrent that's put forward. At a time when demand is increasing, we are seeing a decrease and a defunding of opportunities that are meant to actually allow young people to start earning and be able to plan their lives and effectively get to a point where they are participating in the economic activities and are moving forward with their lives. Next slide, please. Through this submission, we are asking for a very specific ask. We believe that youth unemployment, as it stands, is an emergency. It is urgent, it is systemic, and has immediate and catastrophic consequences. Our ask is therefore quite clear. Kindly reinstate the 5.6 billion allocation for the BEI program and restore 200,000 plus opportunities for young people, and also recognize the BEI as a core employment intervention and not just a temporary program, because we all know that our economy is not growing at a scale that it is able to produce jobs. In 2025 alone, our economy produced only 21,000 opportunities when there's millions of people, and not just young people, that are currently unemployed. To rely and to constantly boost an economy that only produces 21,000 new jobs annually is a little bit short-sighted. But most importantly, we want to ask that the reinstatement of the BEI not come at the expense of other public employment programs. All public employment programs are important. They are not competing interventions, they are complementary. Therefore, the scale of the problem requires expansion and not just reallocation to move money from this person to the next. To close, South Africa is at a critical moment. While the fiscal framework is stabilizing, the economic inclusion itself is not. Through my presentation, I have provided evidence of what works. I have provided evidence of the overwhelming demand for this program and the proven impact. Therefore, we need to fund what works at scale that is required. As it stands, the issue is not the design of the programs or their impacts, but it is prioritization. And through this submission, we are asking that youth unemployment and youth opportunities be prioritized. What we are asking is the restoration of the program, because a permanent crisis like youth unemployment cannot be addressed through temporary funding. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Buhle. I hope National Treasury is with us and listening to all these submissions. May I now invite Ms. Nhlapo, who is a student in public administration and governance from the University of the Northwest. Ms. Nhlapo, welcome, and you may start with your presentation.
Good morning, Chairperson and honorable members of the Select Committee. My name is Zenande Nhlapo, and I'm a third-year student at the Northwest University, and I am studying public administration and governance. Thank you for the opportunity to make this oral presentation. This bill, introduced by the Minister of Finance, seeks approval from Parliament to allocate additional funds for the financial year. However, as much as I acknowledge the importance of funding state operations, I would like to raise three concerns: accountability, corruption, and the broader economic impact. As a student of the public administration, I have both an academic and civic interest in how funds are allocated and managed and accounted for. So my presentation will focus on three concerns regarding the bill: the lack of accountability in existing financial management structures, the ongoing issue of corruption and the misuse of public funds, and lastly, the broader impact on the bill on the South Africa's economy. I will then conclude with recommendations for the improvement. The first concern I would like to raise is the issue of accountability. Approving the additional funds is Before approving the additional funds, it's important to access or to assess how effectively current funds are being managed, and many government departments have consistently failed to demonstrate proper accountability. And the reports from the Auditor General of South Africa have frequently highlighted billions of rands have been lost due to the mismanagement, irregular expenditure, and wasteful spending. This raises an important concern that if existing funds are not being managed responsibly, how will allocating more funds solve the problem we are facing? And Section 38 of the Public Finance Management Act clearly places responsibility on accounting officers to ensure effective financial management. However, in practice, this responsibility is often not fulfilled. So as a result, poor financial management continues to contribute to weak service delivery across the country. And approving additional funds without addressing these accountability failures risk repeating the same cycle of inefficiency and waste. I will follow up with my second concern, which would be the misuse of public funds and corruption, as the country is currently facing a widespread of corruption in management of public funds. And the findings of the Zondo Commission reveal how deeply embedded corruption and the misuse of funds is in our government systems. So this is not just an historical issue. We still see the impact of this today. Allocating additional funds without strengthening or oversight mechanisms creates more opportunity for corruption. Instead of being used for public benefits, funds are often diverted for personal gain or the misuse through irregular procurement processes. So this raises a critical issue that will increasing funds without improving accountability worsen corruption rather than reduce it. If stronger controls are put in place, the objective of the Special Appropriation Bill will not be achieved, and service delivery will remain compromised. My third concern is the impact of the economy. So, South Africa is currently facing a budget deficit, meaning that the government is spending more than it earns. And approving additional funds in these conditions will likely increase the national debts. And this creates long term consequences, particularly for younger generations like myself, who will carry the financial burden of decisions made today. So, if financial mismanagement and corruption are not addressed, increasing expenditure will not improve the economic condition. Instead, it will worsen them. So, therefore, the bill in this current context risk placing further strains on the already struggling economy. And as I had mentioned, that I have proposed following recommendations. So the government departments must first demonstrate the ability to manage existing funds effectively before receiving additional funds, and follow up with strong accountability and oversight measures must be implemented to prevent corruption before any additional funds are approved. And to conclude, while the intention of the special appropriation is to address urgent financial needs, it is essential for us to address the underlying issues of accountability, corruption, and economic sustainability. And without these reforms, additional funds may not achieve its intended outcomes. And that would be all. Honorable members, thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nhlapo. Colleagues, Warren has just sent an apology to say that he's still held up in one of the meetings. So his submission will be considered by the committee as a written submission. And as I said in my opening, that we received 2 more written submissions from Mr. T.T. Libote and Ms. R.E. Smith. Therefore, we had 4 submissions made orally to the meeting, and we'll consider the 3 written submissions. Can I get a hand of colleagues that would want to engage on the presentation by civil society? And as I've noted, National Treasury is in the meeting, and I also saw Advocate Jenkins joining our meeting today. Thank you very much. Can I note hands that would want to talk to the presentations? Honorable Siwisa, I thought you were not in the meeting because you indicated that you are not well. Honorable Ceza was in a meeting, but for now, if he also wants to participate, he may do so. Honorable Siwisa, Honorable Majola, Honorable Brett, Honorable Swart, Honorable Ryder, you'll be the last. Honorable Siwisa, over to you.
No, thank you, Chair. Greetings, everyone, Chair. Yes, I'm not well, Chair, but we've got the responsibilities as public servants, Chairperson, especially in an instance where stakeholders come and make presentations. So we just honoring the deployment that we've been given, Chairperson. And thank you for the well wishes, Chair. I've got only 2 questions. The first one is for the youth capital. Given the fiscal constraints, how should government balance investment in direct employment programs versus infrastructure-led growth? And what criteria should guide such prioritization, Chair? And then my next one is to the young lady, Ms. Nhlapo from University of Northwest. Ms. Nhlapo, I've got only one question for you. In highlighting corruption risks, what specific safeguards and oversight mechanisms do you believe should accompany special appropriations allocations to minimize misuse of funds? Chairperson, those are my only two questions, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Siwisa. Best wishes to your good self. Honorable Majola.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Greetings to the member of the committee and the stakeholders. Madam Chair, I've noted the concerns from the youth capital with regards to the youth unemployment and the call to accommodate the youth initiative when we're dealing with our budget, and also noting the concerns from Zaunanda Tlapo with regards to the accountability and corruption. Madam Chair, I've got one question to COSATU with regards to the support in terms of continuing bailing out the SOEs. As much as it is a good initiative to support the government institutions, entities, but I want to check, Madam Chair, with regards to the COSATU's view, whether do we have to have timelines with regards to these bailouts, because initially the SOEs should in fact generate its own profit, not relying on government bailout. And the question is, what time frame does the COSATU think maybe we need to put a stop, or when will be enough for the government to give the SOEs the bailout? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Majola. Honorable Brits.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With your permission, I'm also going to leave my video off. It is raining terribly here where I am, so my data is limited. Let me start with COSATU. I note that you call for expanded state support, including potential debt relief for SOEs. Now, given our fiscal constraints, where should we draw the line? And what hard governance reforms, operational benchmarks, or accountability measures should be in place before a single extra rand is considered to be spent as additional support to these SOEs? We can't simply recycle bailouts, and bailouts must be extremely limited at this stage. You've also mentioned and highlighted the need to strengthen the revenue mobilization. I would love to hear from COSATU, what are the practical and implementable steps be to improve tax compliance and collection without squeezing already compliant taxpayers and workers? And how quickly, according to COSATU, can these measures realistically yield results? Coming to youth capital, I've listened very carefully to the presentation on BEI. Now, the defunding of the BEI is a serious policy shift, according to me. I would love to hear from Youth Capital. Can they spell out the real world impact? What happens at household level, in schools and in local economies, for example, when these opportunities disappear? And can they give maybe a quantification of that impact beyond general statements? Because I've only heard general statements in this regard. Coming to Breadline Africa, now, very interesting submission, but Breadline Africa flagged a structural mismatch between ECD funding and infrastructure. Now, I would love to hear if they can give us hard numbers to that gap nationally, and to show us in rands and cents how this misalignment is directly going to be driving underspending and inefficiency. Then the proposal around indirect Schedule 6 type mechanisms sounds promising, but you must agree with me that can also be very risky. Can Redline Africa spell it out? What are the key risks? Where are the capacity gaps, and what governance safeguards must be non-negotiable to make this work? Then lastly, to Redline, we are operating in a constrained fiscal environment, as you said yourself, but make your case plain so that I also can understand. How do we justify prioritizing ECD infrastructure over competing demands? And how can you quantify the long-term return in terms of human capital and economic growth? Madam Chair, at this stage, those are my questions, but lastly, I want to thank once again all the presenters and all the institutions that made presentations to this committee. Each and every presentation brings a fresh point of view to the committee, and thank you for participating in making South Africa a democratic society. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Brett. It's just unfortunate that your questions to Redline Africa will not be responded to, as they are not here, and we have considered their submission as a written one, but I allowed you so that it can be recorded. Maybe in their time of leisure, they'll be able to listen and might attempt through writing to respond to your questions. Honorable Swart.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and good morning to all the members and all the presenters. Thank you very much for all the presentations. One or two questions have been dealt with. Honorable Chair, just my one question for Kusatu. There's strong argument for more infrastructure-led stimulus, particularly through Transnet and rail. But what we've seen over the years, millions already allocated to these entities over the years with limited turnaround. My question is, Honorable Chairperson, what specifically must change this time in governance and especially execution to ensure this investment translates into jobs, real jobs and growth, and not just more spending without any results? Redline Africa is not here. On one question, women on farms. They made a compelling case that current grants are below food poverty line. But given the fiscal constraints, how should the committee, we as a committee, weigh immediate grant increases against long-term sustainability? That's what we really must need to look about and plan for the long-term sustainability. And what would be your top priority if only one intervention is possible? I've heard, the compelling case from women on farms. I see it when I visit my constituency every second week, how people struggling, how people stand alongside the road and try to sell. And that is one thing that we also really must do, and that is to empower women on farms to become not only seasonal workers, but real entrepreneurs. There are so many ways how we can try and do that and empower our local entrepreneurs in South Africa. Youth capital, you argue that youth unemployment is treated as a priority in policy, but not in budget. what specific funding model or target should government adopt to ensure youth employment is treated with the same discipline as debt and deficit targets? And that is very important for us. We need to tackle youth unemployment. The BEI has created large numbers of opportunities, but many are short-term. How do we ensure these programs translate into sustainable employment pathways rather than temporary relief? Then just one input, Honourable Chairperson. We are hearing strong calls for more funding across different sectors, infrastructure, social grants, youth unemployment, but very little is being said about fixing implementation failures. Should we as committee not shift its focus on how much we spend to what outcomes we get? And how do we enforce that shift in practice? Honourable Chair, that is from my side.
Thank you very much, Honourable Swart. Honourable Ryder.
Good afternoon. No, good heavens, it's still morning. It feels like a whole day. Today's been a long week. Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, and a big thank you to all of the presenters. I think that we've already said thank you and well done via Honourable Brits, but I do want to just emphasise Ms. Nhlapo's involvement and presentation today, putting her university qualification to good use, and actually taking the next step and getting involved in parliamentary processes. Excuse me. So well done, and thank you for your inputs today, which actually bring me to the point that I want to highlight the most. And I think that, we need to remember, Chairperson, we are here to focus on the Special Appropriations Bill, which by its nature is quite finely focused on a very few different, aspects and components, and that's why it's a Special Appropriation Bill. And yeah, I think that the biggest issue that we need to pull out, because all of the presenters highlighted the concerns from their particular interest areas. So COSATU on behalf of the workers, Women on Farms on behalf of the farm workers, the youth did their thing, etc. But it's important to note that in this Special Appropriation Bill, there's some specific funding happening, and the whole point is everyone's saying we want our interest group to be included, and the only way for that to happen, as Ms. Nhlapo has very correctly pointed out, is to ensure that the money that's appropriated through this appropriation bill is properly managed and properly monitored, to ensure that there's no corruption, and that the money is actually used what it's expected to be used for. And this is the whole point of government, and why we keep saying that broad-based economic empowerment has not worked, because it hasn't been broad-based. And the point is this: as you're sitting with a couple of individuals who are benefiting from tenders and contracts, and it's the same people benefiting time and time again. So all that ends up happening is that one particular contractor gets to upgrade their son's new BMW and replace it with a new Ferrari instead. While so many people, like the women working on farms, like the young that are sitting at home unemployed, like the workers who are not being paid sufficiently for the inputs and the contributions that they're making, are being undermined. And in fact, the work is being done in a shoddy manner and not having an impact on the broader community. So if we are appropriating additional money, it must be used to good effect. We need to keep an eye on the corruption. We need to make sure that there are no backhanders. We need to try and keep that out of the chosen few who repeatedly get these contracts, etc. So I think if I can, the thing that I took out the most is that everybody's comments today will be best achieved or will be best addressed if, in fact, all we do is we take this money that's being appropriated and we make sure it's being spent on what it's intended to be spent for and not being whittled away and squandered in the purchase of Ferraris and fancy vehicles. It's gotten to a point where the frustration is palpable from every single presenter today. People are frustrated that money's being whittled away. And not meeting its intended objectives. I do hope that one day we get to a point where women on farms will see the full supply chain or value chain issues and will be in a position where they're no longer focusing just on the immediate where's my wage coming for and starting to consider the fact that some of these metro rail upgrades that are being proposed and dealt with in terms of what we're dealing with today. Some of the railway corridor upgrades, etc., will benefit the farming market, and of course, therefore, enable better situations for farmers. And one would expect that those better situations get passed on to the labourers. But Chair, that's my input. Thank you, and again, massive thanks to the contributors today and to colleagues.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ryder. I saw the hand of Honorable Ndlovu earlier, but I don't see her on the platform. She will indicate if she still wants to make a submission. Honorable Ndlovu.
Chair, I think good morning to your good self and honorable members, and let me also join my colleagues in welcoming the presentation. I only had two questions, Chair, from the Breadline Africa, and after hearing you that say they are no longer on the platform, then that's why I had to lower my hand. But let me only raise one that, especially to the youth capital, that I also looked at wanted to get clarity on the defunding of the BEI has significantly implications. Can they elaborate on the broader socioeconomic consequences? I think that one was, my apologies, was asked by Honorable Swart. The one that is in advocating for the reinstatement of the BEI, can they unpack the evidence of its cost effectiveness and multipliers effects, particularly in comparison to other employment or infrastructure-based intervention? Thank you, Chair. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Ndlovu. Honorable Ceza.
No, thank you very much, Chair. Mine has been covered by mostly across all previous colleagues. Greetings to you and greetings to colleagues and the stakeholders. I do not think that given the amount of presentations that we got, this special appropriation wouldn't concur with the presentations in light of the fact that the youth is the future of this country, and the workers collectively produce goods and services, or rather sell their labor for capitalists in this country, and therefore cannot in the output end find comfort in terms of the allocated funds. The bottom line, Chair, is the country choosing procyclical austerity, which austerity spiral, which intensifies economic crisis by cutting spending when economies are weak, while counter-cyclical policy uses public intervention to stabilize and revive that growth. There is no development, Chair, in light of the 2.67 trillion of the total spending framework. that we are talking about that might have to be added on due to specific issues that are raised here. The only question that we should be able to ask is what removed the 200,000 opportunities for the youth given the crisis and given a developmental a character of the state and how does that how is the treasury justifying that because cutting anything across all departments means that there's constraints in terms of those opportunities and the growth of the economy, because the youth will be participating in their own local economies and also and ultimately the economy of the country, and are able at a municipal level to actually pay for revenue. Because currently there's social interventions that have to be made vis-a-vis the employment itself, and therefore constraints in the economy, in the economies of municipalities to actually be able to collect and be municipalities that are actually self-reliant. I do not think that these special appropriations wouldn't support. I just have the last question to Treasury. How do they justify shrinking labor interventions, therefore, amid over 10 million excluded youth? Is fiscal consolidation being pursued at the direct expense of youth livelihood in this country? And how do they give meat and detail to the prioritization of fiscal consolidation over youth at the expense of the youth livelihoods? And at the global level, what influences the kind of policy framework, fiscal policy framework that we have in the country, which adversely impact on these sectors that are in front of us now, including the women on farms, for instance, because these women are vulnerable groups, and they were oppressed during apartheid, and now they are still oppressed. They are not supported, and I just want to check why what would stop the treasury from supporting such vulnerable groups. Chair, thank you very much. Those are my submissions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Teza. I hope your submission and your clarity-seeking questions will form part of the responses that will be made by National Treasury before the committee on the 6th of May next week, as they will be responding to all the submissions. Let me now invite first the Women on Farm project to respond to every submission, every question, or any comment made by members, and you are also invited to do your parting shots, as this will be the last opportunity given to your good self to talk on today's presentations. Welcome on Women on Farm project.
Good afternoon again, and thank you so much. Morning again. Thank you so much for the comments and for the sympathetic notes that were given. And I would agree with Honorable Member Ryder when he says that we are the supply value chain. How do we improve it so that women, we can move to more concrete issues? Because we are still at the bottom. We're looking about minimum wages. We're talking about exposure to pesticides. So the broad context and that Honorable Member Swart, thank you so much also for your comments. They forced us to think. And so what we are thinking is that we have, as Women on Farms Project, we have the Feminist Reparation Campaign. And that campaign is targeted at women that have experienced centuries of abuse and oppression. And that money and must be used to address those inequalities. And part of that campaign is the notion of a wealth tax. So I want to return back to the wealth tax and the possibilities of a wealth tax, because as we've indicated in the submission, with a 30% tax evasion, 3 to 7% on the richest 1% of South Africans, that could produce 134 billion rand. And we also note that our options that we put forward, none of them was a cheap option. It was asking for a lot of money. Our cheapest option, or the less funding, required 27 billion to increase the child support grant by 30%, which is the anticipated agricultural cost. And the budget as it stands now, the bill as it stands now, is 21 billion. So we understand, and we were shocked also when we went through and we understood the pressure that you're under. So if there was a wealth tax that produced 134 billion, we'd be able to cover the 27 billion quite easily with change. And so we understand that this would take a bit of time, but we are asking at the very least, can we begin the conversation around exploring what a wealth tax would be? Like, because currently the richest man in South Africa is Mr. Johan Rupert, and he's worth 305 billion. And that's a lot of money. That gives you a scale of the seismic inequality. And so we, as part of the feminist separation, we have a wealth tax, but we say this wealth tax must be used to fund land. Land must be redistributed back to women. We have the campaign 1 hectare, 1 land. Education, which includes free transport, because as Nicolene indicated, that would make a massive difference to our budget, and quality healthcare. So if your healthcare is, and your education is sorted, and you had land where you were growing vegetables, for example, which is a policy at Women on Farms Project, that would free up so much of your actual monetary revenue. So I want to hand over to Nicolene, who would give you, I asked her if you only had one intervention, what would you submit and recommend? So Nicolene.
Yes, good morning again. According to one intervention required, I will say stop the minimum wage and give us a living wage. A living wage will come up to 8,500 per month. It will be a huge help. So we don't have to put restraint on the social grant, because it's only for now, because we know there's no money, and it's only temporarily. We don't want something for now, we want something for long term. So if we can get a living wage, it will make a huge difference on our living, how we live in. At the end of the day, there will be much less hunger in South Africa, especially for us as farm workers. And we do stuff on our own to help us. Like we have the gardens, we provide our own veggies. We don't sell it, but we help our community members. We even give other women in our community from our veggies we grow on in our yards. And in like Karamaka say, one woman, 1 hectare. That will help us also a lot, because then we can make bigger gardens and help more people, and even start selling our veggies for our income at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me welcome Kosatu to respond on the submissions made by members.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, members. I think there's largely two issues that members raised. I think, Chair, the one issue is around the state-owned enterprises, bailouts. I think we would all agree that, the era of bailouts with no strings attached, just best wishes, that's over. I think we all know that the real cost of fiscals was significant in that regard. But Chair, I think we've now moved to a phase, and I think that's what you can see in this year's budget and even last year's budget, in terms of the infrastructure allocations and also this special appropriation bill. The funds given now are correctly for certain things. So, last year's budget spoke about revamping the signaling for Metro Rail, for example. The allocation of this budget for Transnet speaks to the North Corridor, the Coal Corridor, and Durban Port, container port, and similarly the restocking of Metro Rail. So I think those have been useful, Chair, because it's not just simply a blank check. And I think if I'm right, Treasury is actually in some of the transit infrastructure investments is directly investing it itself, so that you don't just allocate money to a bank account of an SOE and just hope that they will spend it as they promised. So I think you can see significant tightening of the of the financial support, which is correct. And I think, Chair, what I can also see a positive turnaround on some of the key SOEs. I think we've all seen at Eskom, at Transnet, at Metro Rail, even SCA, despite the latest noise, a beginning of a turnaround strategy. And I think it's correct to say that any investment from the state, because of the fiscal pressures, is linked to a turnaround. And that has to be premised upon the fundamentals of appointing competent management, of removing corrupt criminal elements, of dealing with wasteful expenditure, but also in terms of repivoting the SOE. So I think we're comforted that government has turned the corner on that front, but also want to say that, and we agree with members, it can't be never ending. It has to be linked to a turnaround plan. But I think we'd also want to say that, an Eskom, a Transnet, a Metro Rail, they play such a huge role in the economy. And if they can be fully functional, there's spillover positive benefits to the economy, to businesses, to industries, to workers, to consumers or commuters, etc. But equally, Chair, we also can't afford for these SOEs to collapse. So I think it's about finding the right balance. We do think we're beginning to find it. But I also want to say, Chair, that, we also can't afford for these ones to implode. When we saw, when Transnet was its productivity level basically was half of what it was in '94, just 3 years ago. There's a huge spillover effect to the economy. Mining companies are having to stockpile the exports. Agricultural exports were rotting on the ports. The motor manufacturing sector couldn't get its cars to their destinations in Europe or North America, etc. And all of that threatened workers' jobs. But I think, we are heartened that we're beginning to see some turnaround in that regard. And yes, government must continue to wield a very firm stick to the SOEs. But in addition, Chair, when SOEs are able to make a coherent motivation for an investment, then that should be also given support. And I think, Chair, one of the useful things also is to say that you can also invest in some of the SOEs through bonds, not just giving a blank check, handing over money, etc., but that you get a return on investments. That's what we've seen, for example, the PIC doing as well, to invest in the SOEs, but then there's a return on investment to the shareholder or to the pension, etc. But yeah, Chair, we also want to say that philosophically we must have also a longer term approach. Yes, we must spend some money today on, be it on public services or municipalities or SOEs, but if it's done correctly, if it's done smartly, the longer term benefit to the economy can be positive in terms of businesses taking off, jobs being created and saved, and also tax revenue being generated for the state. Then let's just lastly, Chair, the other question around around the issue of tax. Again, Chair, one of the success stories of this administration, even the previous administration, has really been the turnaround at SARS. And we think it's really going to be the engine of the turnaround of South Africa and the state at large. Just like under the Mandela and Mbeki administration, SARS was really the engine of their successes. And we've seen under the outgoing Commissioner Kiswetter a real turnaround. And again, the basics: competent management, removing corrupt elements, filling critical vacancies, attracting the right skills, investing in the capacity and the infrastructure. And we've seen, Chair, in the last couple of years, tax compliance has improved from 61 to 67%. We think the next focus must really be how to raise tax compliance to 75%. And every 1% improvement, Chair, of existing taxes, not even new taxes, just existing taxes, it generates about 20 billion rand worth of taxes owed to the state. If we can get to 75% over this MTEF, that will yield an additional 20 billion rand. It is an ambitious target, but it's a correct one. And it's a very motivation that SARS also had raised last year when we had the 2% VAT hike debate, that it's far better to invest in SARS, boost its capacity to go after tax evasion, customs fraud, etc., then to introduce new taxes upon working or middle-class families, SMEs who are really already struggling to cope with rising cost of living. And which it's about also making sure that you deal with the high wealth individuals who've got fancy tax consultants who are going to find loopholes. That we really make sure the informal sector, the taxi industry, etc., pay their fair share of taxes. But also chairs around enforcing customs duties. About 10% of goods coming through our ports of entry are inspected for customs. That's a huge loophole. We should be really ramping that up significantly, investing in scanning machines, etc., having additional boots on the ground. Because, Chair, if you can improve customs compliance, not only does it generate revenue for the state to provide public services, but also it helps to protect local jobs and local businesses from often deliberately under-invoiced goods coming through, often subsidized goods, etc., etc. But also, Chair, if we improve tax compliance, we can actually get back to a space where we were 20 years ago, where we were able to reduce the tax burden upon working middle-class families. And that can help to enable them to take care of their families, get out of debt, but also have money to help stimulate the local economy. So I think, Chair, I think those are the two major points. We do see some real green shoots in this regard, but of course we've got significant progress we must still undertake. But I think for once we can begin to say on these fronts, be it a Transit or Metro Rail, or be it a SARS, we are beginning to turn the corner, not out of the woods, but again, Chair, we're beginning to see some real progress for once. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, members. Hopefully, I stuck to the time, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Magwaza, on behalf of Youth Capital.
Thank you for the opportunity to provide some additional nuance and some additional experiences of young people as far as the BEI is concerned. I noticed that there was an overlap in some of the questions, so I'm just going to respond to everything. If something still remains unclear, I'll happily come back to it. So the first question was on fiscal constraints. We do recognize the fiscal constraints, and we are not necessarily arguing that fiscal discipline is unimportant. Rather, our argument is that fiscal discipline should not mean defunding high-impact programs that directly convert into earning opportunities for young people. So the question is not necessarily whether money is available, but whether current allocations reflect the scale of the youth unemployment crisis in the country. In the immediate term, we are asking the committee to consider a targeted special appropriations to reinstate the BEI implementation funding. This could come through various reprioritization processes that protects core social employment programs. And as we said, we do not believe that the reinstatement should come from other public employment programs, because these programs are complementary and they are working together to actually provide earning opportunities for young people. The solution cannot be that every year young people are waiting and scrambling to hear whether there'll be public employment opportunities for them or whether they'll be implemented. The BEI needs to be built into the baseline through a ring-fenced multi-year public employment allocation. This will then also improve planning, reduce disruption, and allow then Parliament and Treasury to really track the value for money clearly. What is currently happening is that because there isn't a ring-fenced funding, funding is every year, then young people go through the cycle of waiting to hear whether the BEI will then be implemented. This means that 1 year the BEI is running for a full 12 months, another year it's running for 8 months, another year it's running for like 6 months. In that way, then you cannot be able to properly track the impact of the program. It also doesn't allow young people to then build enough skill sets and be able to learn as much as they can through this program so that they can then transition into more permanent and more sustainable programs or employment opportunities. I don't know if everyone knows this, but public employment programs are not necessarily to be long-term opportunities for young people. They are meant to provide them with meaningful first-hand experience, which is something that is currently missing for young people. According to Statistics South Africa, 58% of young people that are currently unemployed today have never had a job before. And that is because whenever they're applying for a job, the experience, that work experience, is becoming more and more of a requirement. And you cannot get the experience without actually working, but you need to get the experience to actually get a job. So there is like a mismatch in that. And public employment programs like BI then provide that opportunity for young people to tap into that first-hand, meaningful work experience. So then our position is not that spend without limits, but rather protect and fund what works, reprioritize towards direct employment impacts, and then ensure that fiscal consolidation does not come at the expense of young people who need access to work. We believe that it is more fiscally responsible to fund a proven program that can immediately restore 200,000 opportunities than to leave those funds tied up in a slower moving allocation while youth unemployment deepens. And to take this further, in the tabled budget, 1 trillion was allocated to infrastructure. But what was missing from that allocation, what is the plan for young people? It shouldn't be that young people are then expected that opportunities are going to trickle down from such allocations, but it should be from the 1 trillion that is allocated to infrastructure. This is the plan for young people. We are going to ensure that X amounts of opportunities are then ring-fenced for young people. This is the plan. And this 1 trillion rand actually cannot be used immediately. Not all of it can be used to then drive the implementation of these infrastructure projects. So what we are asking for is that whatever allocations are made that are meant to like stabilize the economy, provide a plan for how young people are going to benefit from that, because it shouldn't be that they wait in hopes that eventually it'll be them, eventually it'll come to them. In the President's SONA speech for the year, he reiterated the impact of public employment programs, and BI being one of them. BI, by the way, is the only program that is the largest for young people. All other public employment programs benefit both young people and older people, meaning that then I guess the benefits of the programs are not just for young people, but this specific problem, the BI program, is specifically for young people. So to defund the only program that then benefits young people only, is it's very catastrophic, and it is something that we should try and rectify as soon as we can. And just in closing, young people are the future. A third of the population of South Africa is made up of young people. So then allocating them with opportunities is a form of investment to young people who make up a third of the population. And then I want to then come back to the question around what is the impact of the program to beneficiaries themselves. So in 2023, Youth Capital ran research where we collected insights and lived experiences of young people as far as what has their experience been like, having been through the BEI, and what has improved for them. And we can share the reports, we can share the link of the reports. It's called, in my own words, Experiences from Teachers Assistant Program Participants. Lebogang, who is 31, from Limpopo, said that before joining the program, I ran a small business. Working as an assistant taught me many things. I learned a lot about kids. I gained experience working in the office, assisting in class, and I managed to save money to take care of my needs. This experience motivated me to start studying education. I want to study teaching and become a full-time teacher. There's also Lucanyo from Tanzania, who also said that they learned how important the learning environment is and the role played by both teachers and parents to promote learners' progress. And then we also have Nolita from Soweto, who is 30 years old. Through the Teacher's Assistant Program, I gained work experience and I learned how to deal with children in a positive learning environment. I got inspired. I was able to earn and take care of my family. There's a lot of evidence like this. We're going to share this report. It has much more evidence of young people who speak about the impact of the program on their lives. Also, our schools are undercapacitated, so teachers and learners are also benefiting from it. I'm going to share some insights from a latest report that was released in February this year, which speaks about what is the impact on the ground for teachers, for the learners, and ultimately for the future of this country. In the 2021 Progress International Reading Literacy Study, data showed that 81% of grade 4 learners in South Africa are unable to read for meaning in any language. That is devastating. Through having this additional capacity from the teachers' assistants, the grade 1 learners through the Zazi Izande program, which is being implemented in the Eastern Cape, it was found that grade 1 learners meeting the 40 letters per minute mark benchmark increased from 12.3% to 32.4%. That is quite an increase. And also I'm going to quote other people who have worked on this program. Teachers assistants. Sorry?
You have less than 2 minutes to wrap up.
Thank you. There is a couple of young people who have also mentioned that before joining the program, they hadn't had an opportunity to actually get any work experience. And 14% of the teachers' assistants who are working in these programs are actually qualified teachers, but there isn't opportunities for them to get experience or to work as teachers. So for them, this is an opportunity for them to get that experience and be able to start earning. And for many young people who are coming from child-headed households, this has been quite a game changer for them because they are now able to provide for their families. They are able to then start participating in the economy. So just to reiterate, 200,000 opportunities is a lot to take away in a single budget cycle. If we are scaling down, let's scale down properly. Let's do bits by bits by bits by bits. And let's make sure that young people are not the people that are being sacrificed. It seemed like there was a plan for everything in both the SONA and the tabled budgets. But when it came to young people, it was reiteration of the same things we've heard in the past year. It was being reminded that we are in a crisis. What we require right now are solutions, and defunding programs that work at scale doesn't seem like a solution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Buhle. Let me welcome Ms. Nhlapo for her parting shots and responses.
Thank you again for the opportunity. I was asked a question about which safeguards should, Which safeguards should be implemented to accompany the bill in order to minimize corruption? And I have a few recommendations. Probably if audits and reviews, if we do frequent audits, frequent audits must be conducted to deduct and prevent the misuse early. And additionally, probably if departments should regularly publish clear reports on how money is spent, and this transparency, like transparent reports, will help us safeguard and to minimize corruption within the government. And additionally, funds should only be released if departments show that they can manage the existing budgets properly. And that would be all, as that is the only question I had received. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nhlapo. Honorable members, do you have any short follow-up that you would want to make? I see that we still have time. I don't see a hand from any of the members.
We are fine, Chair. Thank you.
Which means members are sufficiently responded to and clarified on issues. Honorable members, representatives from the National Treasury, stakeholders and members of the public through the stakeholders today. This brings us to the end of our public hearing, and I want to thank all who made submissions and engaged so constructively. Your inputs are indeed invaluable. The submissions we have heard collectively highlight a fundamental tension at the heart of the Special Appropriations Bill: the need to balance fiscal consolidation with economic stimulus, infrastructure investments, and social protection, and expanded funding with strengthened accountability. Honorable members, the committee's engagement with stakeholders today reaffirms our responsibility. It is critical that we ensure the Special Appropriation Bill advances inclusive development, it strengthens the fiscal discipline, and delivers measurable outcomes for citizens, particularly the most vulnerable amongst us. I'm sorry for that, colleagues. On behalf of the committee, I want to assure the public through these stakeholders that we have heard you. We will take these submissions forward as we deliberate on the bill. Our oversight does not end here. We will continue to demand efficiency, transparency, and accountability in the use of every rand that is appropriated. To the National Treasury and all the departments concerned, the message from the hearing is very clear. There's a request for additional funding, and this additional funding must translate into real change on the ground. I therefore, colleagues, declare this public hearing closed, and I thank you for your participation. Responses to all submissions made today will be done by National Treasury next week on the 6th of May. Thank you very much, colleagues. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye. Thank you so much.